Hello and welcome to Man Cave Mechanic. My name is Brya, and today we're going to dive a little farther into the Volvo Penta fuel pump assembly. We're going to tear into these high pressure and low pressure pumps, OEM, as well as the aftermarket high pressure pump. We're going to start out by cutting off the housing. We're going to break it down piece by piece and try and explain to you as much as possible how these inner workings work. Let's get at it. Alright, I've chosen three pumps that we're going to take apart. The low pressure, which is on the vise right now, a aftermarket high pressure, and a Volvo Penta high pressure. We'll get those cut open and see what they look like. Alright, we've got the three pumps laid out here that we cut open. Starting from this side, this is the low pressure pump, Volvo pump, high pressure Volvo pump, and high pressure aftermarket pump. They're in order of flow, starting from this side. Fluid or fuel will enter this side and exit out the top here. The high pressures sit like that, and the low pressures sit like this. So let's start with the low pressure. Remove it from the housing. It's just an aluminum housing. Set that back here. Here is the entrance, the O-rings that seal into the, in this case, upper assembly. The screen that keeps the contaminants from getting into the pump itself. And you can see, I'll shine a light behind this, you can see paint chips in there. We're going to take that screen off and look in there. Okay? Alright. Pop that screen off. And you can see what a mess that is. It's all paint chips that have come in and blocked that. So, as you can see, the fluid or the fuel flows up through this opening into this portion of the screen in the center here. This inner portion here. So you've got all this outer portion that's got a lip underneath it, which is this. And those paint chips get stuck underneath there until the pressure's off, and then I think they float back out here, and occasionally I think that's the problem that most people have with their boats working sometimes and not other times. So the paint chips will float out here, occlude their screen, then they let off on the fuel or let off on the throttle or shut off the motor, and then these float off to the side, opening that flow again, and then they're good for a little while until that floats back out here and occludes that again. So there's paint chips, there's the screen. There's two different kinds of screens. There's this little bit coarser screen that you can see here. It's kind of like the screen you'd have in your house almost, except this is obviously finer, but it's that little more sturdy of a screen. This screen here, if you happen to have this one in your fuel pump, this one is like a nylon, and you can hear it rip. Very fine. I'm sure it's great for keeping out all contaminants, but it also occludes very easily. So that will burn up your pump as well. Alright, so we'll move on to the actual pump itself. This is called a gear pump or a gerotor pump, and we'll kind of take this apart if we can. There we go. So this is the inlet. It's coming in through here. It's got these gears that spin from the armature and creates the flow through the pump. Here's a better view of that. And that just rotates around there and causes flow, fuel flow. Next you have the housing over the top of the magnet assembly. And we're just going to get a little medieval here and tear this apart. Obviously we don't care what happens to this because we just want to see what's inside. Alright, here you have your electrical contacts. Those connect up with the low pressure electrical contact here. And sometimes I get these and they're very corroded. And after tearing this apart, I see that these can be replaced. So these can be popped right off here. So some people, when they go to tear their pump apart, they'll pry against this, against the lower assembly, and break this. Don't worry, I've got parts of these. You can just pop that off and put a new one on if your low pressure pump is still working. And see, so that just unplugs from there. So get it's not a new one, but it's a used one, and at least it'll replace the broken one that you have. So that'll go there. Here you have the armature and the magnet assembly. So the armature spins in here, spins the gear pump or the gerotor pump, and then fluid flows through the whole thing. It's a flow through pump, and the fuel will cool and lubricate the armature as it goes through and exits out through the pump once it's energized. Okay, so that's the low pressure one. High pressure one, let's take a look at that. This is the Volvo Penta high pressure pump. Again, aluminum housing, another screen. You can kind of see this one. Oh, this one is the nylon one I was telling you about. So it's it's pretty clogged up. You can see how it gets around the edge there and gets pretty clogged. Kind of see, yeah, maybe that's a little better, how it's pretty dirty around the outside, and it's so fine that it's almost a detriment to the pump. Okay, so you can pop that out of there, and there's what the inlet side looks like. Let's see all that on there. So when I clean these and flush them and test them, and look at all that on there, I can get in there with a dental tool and scrape most of that out to clean all that without taking the whole pump apart. So I scrape out as much of that debris out of there as possible, and obviously if there's large paint chips, they'll get way back in here and still have the potential to float out. So replacement of these pumps, if you get a lot of big paint chips in here, is probably the best thing. And the aftermarket pumps are so cheap now, it's worth just replacing them. Okay, again, same thing. Another gear pump or gerotor pump, pulling the fluid after the armature turns it, pulls the fuel through the pump, cooling it, and moving it out to your fuel rail. And these electrical connections are pretty much the same as the low pressure. We'll just pop these off just to show you. but they don't need to be popped off to remove the plug-in from the exterior. So you can pull those right out of there and replace those as well. So if you got a bad or corroded electrical connection off of your high pressure pump, but your high pressure pump you think is still working good, you just need to replace this, no problem. I got a bunch of these. And then this is the same thing. The magnet assembly here with the armature going through and being lubricated as the fuel flows through the pump and then out to your fuel rail. Now, recently a customer brought to my attention, where is the check valve? And I'll give a little shout out for a thanks to Captain Rod Rogers of Flathead Lake, Montana. He's a captain up there of the Pescadora. He's a charter boat captain. He's wondering where the check valve is on these. So after cutting these apart, I cut one apart to find where the check valve is, and it's inside this nipple here that goes to your fuel rail. So these pumps, after a little more education here and watching some more videos and learning about these things, these pumps require a pressure relief valve and a check valve. So the pressure relief valve is already inside your fuel pump fuel cell. So it's right in here. So that just keeps the system from being over pressurized. The check valve holds pressure in your fuel rail so that when you go to start your boat, it's got fuel ready to go. So you don't have to sit there and crank it. So if you're having that issue where you have to keep cranking your motor, you might have a bad check valve in your high pressure pump. And that is only going to be replaced by replacing the whole high pressure pump. Now, you can get a Volvo Penta one. They're about $300 for an OEM one. Or you can get an aftermarket one from anywhere from $50 to $80. So we're going to take a look at that next. So that check valve is right in there. This is what it looks like. This fits in there. This spring goes in here like this. There's a little rubber seal that the fluid obviously comes in and pushes this up, allowing the fuel flow to go through, and then seats back to hold the pressure in the system. So if any debris gets in there and cracks, keeps that open, you're going to lose pressure in there. You might be able to flush that out. It's a possibility, but like I said, these pumps are so cheap to replace now that it's probably just worth replacing it. Okay. Last but not least is the high pressure aftermarket one. You can tell these because they have a smooth outer shell, whereas these are they've kind of ridged these to hold the gerotor pump in place and the magnet assembly also here. So that's how you can tell the difference. Plus these have writing on them that'll say high pressure, and they both say high pressure on them, the low pressure and the high pressure, but this is actually, even though it says high pressure on it, it's still a low pressure pump. Don't ask me why, I can't explain that one. Here we have the aftermarket one, high pressure pump. The outer assembly is a little more robust than the Volvo Penta one. Doesn't really matter in my opinion if it's more robust on the outside, as long as the motor works on the inside. So let's see how this one looks. Alright, so where these are male connections, excuse me, these are female connections, these are male connections here. Yep, those are male connections. And they have a little O-ring in them as well to seal that off. Same thing, check valve right in the nipple that's exiting to the fuel rail. And here I have it broke down a little bit. Theirs is a little different. This holds it in place, obviously. It's got a ball, half ball there with a spring. And that just fits in that little plastic housing. So it's not metal, but resists fuel anyway. Still got a rubber seal there. It's probably still prone to debris getting in there if your pump is got contamination in it, like this paint. That debris still gets through there. It breaks down and still gets through those screens and gets up into your, even as far as your fuel pressure regulator, which you should always check that and clean that off as well. All right, so let's open this up. Hopefully not cut myself. Still got a little fuel in it. All right, so here's the screen for this one. You can see this one is even open a little bit more. And you can't see the screen from the end of this, from the inlet. You can't see up in there. It's too hard to see. All you can see is this center part. Whereas on the Volvo Penta, you can see the screen. Problem is, you can't see what's underneath that lip that goes way out to here. You can't see any of that. So, and this one obviously lets a lot more fluid through. So, but if you have your pump cleaned out of paint, you shouldn't have a problem. The only problem you'll have is anything gets past your fuel filter. Okay, now this one, that is no good. No wonder this pump had some problems. That armature in there is melted. So obviously this pump probably overheated, because this is what the armature is supposed to look like. So whatever person had a problem with this, yeah, that basically overheated, melted that plastic there, and seized up that pump. So there's the reason why that one quit working. So to show you the difference, this is probably the Volvo Penta one is probably going to last a little better as far as if it heats up, probably be able to last a little longer, whereas the aftermarket one heats up to whatever temperature it caused to get to that. It must have got pretty hot. We'll seize that right up. So it's probably why it's a lot cheaper, but there you have it. Now I went a little further and broke this down. So I'll take it apart, see if I can put it back together. So here's the exterior housing. This is on the most outer part of the housing next to the screen. You can see I have one in there right now. So that goes down. We have this spring. I'll just leave that in there for now. This pulls apart. There's two push pins that basically hold this all together. All right. here, and then we've got the two gears here, like so. Okay, so let's try and put this back together. See if we can do that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put these together first. So those will snap together. That little spring holder there, looks like I have to put that in first. Put that in. Spring in. Now what I found was easier is to put the smaller gear in first, and then it's a little offset. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see it's closer to this side than it is this side. So you just kind of got to mesh that in there. And then basically that cover just goes right on here like this. Then you've got it back together. And again, this would fit into there inside the housing like so. Draw that fluid up, the fuel, through here and right through here, through this electric motor, and then out the exit to your fuel rail. There you have it, the inner workings of the OEM Volvo Penta high pressure and low pressure pumps. If you're interested in my refurbished service, I'll leave my information below. If you're interested in any of my videos on the Volvo Penta fuel pump assembly, click up here. If you'd like to visit my website, mancavemechanic.com, for parts and prices, click over here. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, click here. Leave a like and comment. My name is Brya with Man Cave Mechanic. Have a great day.